Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back to Wall Street Bullion. Our guest today is JP Cortez. JP is the executive director at Sound Money Defense League. Welcome back, JP.
Hey, Ivan, thanks for having me back, man.
Yeah, huge pleasure having you come back down to Wall Street Bullion and speaking to the silver and gold community. I wanted to get you on to talk about everything that's developed since the last time we spoke. We spoke about 2 months ago. Gold was hitting that 3,000 mark. Now we're at about 33.14. It's just so much excitement happening in the silver and gold industry. What are your thoughts on gold and silver right now from to the end of 2025?
Well, I think in general, the last 2 months have been maybe the most action-packed 2 months in the 11 years that we've been writing and advocating for sound money policy. Just shortly after our last interview, Wyoming's governor enacted a bill that established a multi-million-dollar gold reserve, physical gold reserve for the state of Wyoming. That's a $10 million gold reserve they established. Shortly after that, Idaho passed legislation eliminating capital gains on the sale of precious metals and reaffirming gold and silver as constitutional legal tender. Then Kentucky followed up, the fourth state to enact legislation on sound money by removing sales tax on precious metals. You might
Wow.
remember, Ivan, we talked last time we talked. I mentioned that there was big drama happening in Kentucky because we rightfully passed a law in 2024 through the legislature that Governor Andy Beshear vetoed that would have eliminated the sales tax on purchases of precious metals,
Right.
despite the attorney general coming out and saying that Governor Beshear's veto was illegitimate and unconstitutional, that he did not have the power to veto this bill. He directed his departments of revenue to continue collecting this tax. So we passed legislation this year in Kentucky that not only made the sales tax exemption retroactive to 2024, but the bill that we passed introduced stiff penalties. It allowed taxpayers to sue Governor Beshear directly and his departments for wrongful taxation with large daily sums, penalties, penalizing the governor and his departments for taxing precious metals after the legislature duly ended them.
Wow.
Unsurprisingly, just mere minutes after this law was enacted, Money Metals Exchange and several taxpayers in the states joined together and filed a suit against Governor Beshear in Kentucky. So we'll see how that legal battle plays out. But legislatively, Kentucky now becoming the 46th state, as of today, the 46th state in the country to end sales tax on the purchase of precious metals. We're so close to making this tax extinct nationwide.
How,
And then
how,
just
how many
last
more
week,
states? Sorry for cutting you off. Well, how many more states left?
well, we've got four. So there, as of right now, there are 46 states total that have ended this tax. The four that remain are Maine, Vermont, New Mexico, and Hawaii. And
Okay.
we've got legislation in three of those four states. So we're very close to ending this one nationwide. And then just last week, Governor Kay Ivey in Alabama signed another sound money bill in Alabama. This will be their third pro sound money bill enacted into law since 2018. The Sound Money Defense League has been working on all three of these. This one reaffirms gold and silver as legal tender for constitutional use. It's a
Wow.
symbolic victory. The state of Alabama decreeing originally that the removing the sales tax on the purchase of precious metals and then removing the capital gains tax last year. So the state has removed the two major points of friction that exist to using gold and silver as money that are currently imposed by states. So by doing that, people are able to more easily adopt their own personal gold standard. They're more easily able to transact in gold if they want to, and they're just generally more easily able to stack and save and invest in gold and silver. So legislatively, like I mentioned, the last 2 months since we've spoken have been completely action packed, and still, just last week I was in Nashville. We're working on legislation there. Nashville, Tennessee is trying to become the next state to establish a state gold reserve. They're looking at about $65 million that
Wow.
they're interested in buying in physical gold to store within the state. There's a lot of talk about de-dollarization and BRICS countries and the Zimbabwe currency and all that. And, de-dollarization, you don't have to look as far as our adversaries to see that. Even states themselves are de-dollarizing. Many of them are looking at their balance sheets,
Yeah.
seeing that they're holding a bunch of investments with real negative rates of return. They're looking at this and saying, wait, and we don't own a single ounce of gold. Why is that? And
Yeah.
so states now too are buying a lot of gold. So it's exciting. It's exciting time. You hear central banks all around the world are stockpiling gold. So all of this is happening, right at the same time in conjunction with the states acting on the state level. And then on the federal level, I'm happy to say we're working with congressmen to introduce legislation uh, to do an appropriate and a comprehensive audit on America's gold holdings, something that hasn't been done in many decades. So to audit Fort Knox, the gold that is there, and the rest of America's gold and all the places where that is, be that in Denver, be that in West Point, and all of the other places where America's gold is purportedly stored. That's something that hasn't been done in a long time. That America's gold needs refining. That's something that future legislation should address, because
Right.
right now America's gold holdings are not liquid. They do not meet market standards, global market standards, and much of it is they're coin bars, they're melted bars that are very impure. So refining this has to be a process that the American government has to go through in order to shore up this stockpile. It's the greatest monetary asset in the world,
Yeah.
and right now public confidence in the dollar is waning. One of the things that America could do to restore some of that confidence would be to open these vault doors and to show the world that we do indeed have the largest stockpile of the greatest monetary sound money asset in history.
Yeah, this is absolutely incredible, JP, how much has developed just over 2 months. Imagine what happens in the next year. And you've seen about a week ago, you've seen Trump on Truth Social, and he posted a quote and it said, he who holds the gold makes the rules. So you have the president of the United States coming out and talking about gold and how important it is. 2 weeks ago, he was talking about silver. Usually, like I've been in the silver and gold industry for 5 years only, so it's a very short amount of time. But it's just so, it's a breath of fresh air seeing a president talking about how important gold is. What are your thoughts on that?
It's very unlike anything we've seen in modern politics. More than at any time in recent history, Americans and worldwide, more eyes are attuned to America's money than ever before. You've mentioned it just like that. President Trump has made comments recently talking about he who owns or he who holds the gold holds the cards. Of course, Secretary Bassett has also talked. There's a lot of buzz around him talking about remonetizing America's balance sheet and talking about Fort Knox and talking about going in there. And there's, of course, Senator Lummis out of Wyoming talking about wanting to remonetize the gold certificates and then using those proceeds to buy Bitcoin and to do all of these crazy things. So
Yeah.
there's a ton of conversation around America's money, around the status of America's money as the global reserve currency. And frankly, a lot of this is self-inflicted through the politicization and the perversion of America's money to fight wars in places most Americans can't find on maps and to grow a bloated bureaucracy here at home. The confidence in America's money has waned because America has printed in excess, and the stewards of America's money have done a very poor job. In order to restore this confidence, we're talking about not only opening the vault doors, but generally, the truth is there is no alternative to the US dollar as it exists today. No
Right.
one woke up this morning and decided to willingly use the United States dollar, the Federal Reserve note. The truth is that we're trapped. There are so many disincentives and taxes and regulations around using anything else as money, be it gold and silver or anything else. You have to track your cost basis. When you go to the store, you buy a dozen eggs. What was my cost basis? What was the date when I bought it? What's the current spot price? Okay. And it becomes unworkable as a financial, as an accounting issue.
Right.
Um, so to remove these obstacles standing in the way and to allow people to transact without friction is ultimately the most important thing, the most valuable thing that the state can do. We don't need the government to tell us that gold and silver are money. We know that already.
Yeah.
Gold and silver are money in spite of what the government says. In fact, what we need from the government is simply for them to get the hell out of the way and let the market determine what the best money is. And for thousands of years, that has been gold. That's why our gold and silver. That's why the founding fathers of of America, of this Constitution, the American Constitution, wrote in that gold and silver are the only money mentioned. There's a reason for that. They spoke at length. They spilled a ton of ink talking about the dangers and the perils of fiat money and how that can be easily politicized and weaponized to steal from the public writ large. And that's exactly what we've seen here. You now have an empire that's approaching $37 trillion in debt that are now having to talk about these financial alchemy sort of ways to get themselves out of debt. You know, if we just buy a bunch of Bitcoin and then Bitcoin appreciates, we'll be able to pay off our national debt. It's not what serious thinkers are considering. The
Right.
answer has to be sound money. More than things like Doge, more than regulations, sound money can restrain a government better than any agency or rule could. And that's why it's important that we restore gold and silver.
And now a message from our sponsor, Juggernaut Exploration.
One of the more exciting ones, I think, is Juggernaut. I know some people say, well, lightning can't strike twice, and but look, I think one of the things you got to reflect on is that some of the guys who work here at Juggernaut are some of the same geologists that basically found and have now advanced sherbet at Goliath, okay, over the past years. So they have a very different way of thinking about exploration in the Golden Triangle than most other geologists, okay? And they've gone out and they've identified what could be another sherbet type target here. And the size of these veins is absolutely jaw-dropping. My hunch is these guys are onto something pretty special.
The link in the description is right below for Juggernaut Exploration. Now back to the episode. Yeah, you absolutely nailed it, JP. It's so crazy that we're at a state right now where you have $37 trillion debt. But you know what? If you have the president talking about gold, you have people like yourselves out there who are advocating for gold and fighting to have legislation brought on across, the West so that they can be sound money or no taxes in the States on silver and gold purchases, which is fantastic. What about just before you go, I wanted you to briefly talk on, the audit. Is this feasible? Do you have a timeline on it? Do you think it'll be a year, 6 months? What's it looking like for Fort Knox?
Well, as a question of the structure, the machinations through which this has to take place, from the top, we can start from we will not and cannot settle for anything short of a legitimate and comprehensive audit. Elon Musk and others have been talking about how a live stream would be great. Let's walk some cameras and go through the Fort Knox vaults.
That's not
That
enough.
does not suffice. That cannot suffice as a proper audit. We need a full audit, a full inventory. We need to make sure that the bars are physically there. Not only do we need this inventory, we need a full assay. You have to drill into these bars. You have to confirm that they're not gold-plated tungsten or that they're not hollow in the middle. And then we're looking for a full accounting. The bars can sit in one spot and change owners dozens of times without ever moving an inch.
Right.
Who owns the gold? To the extent that it's even there, who owns it? Has it been swapped? Has it been leased? Has it been financially encumbered in any way?
Yeah.
So finding out who owned all of these things are such an important part, and introducing this legislation would be the first step. So I mentioned that we worked with Congressman Alex Mooney from West Virginia in 2019 and then again in 2021 to introduce this legislation. And both years, in neither year did the bill receive even a hearing. But like you mentioned, Ivan, we're living through a monetary event right now.
Yeah.
There is some sort of realignment, or dare I say even a reset happen. There is a financial and a monetary renaissance happening. And there are questions that haven't been posed in decades that are being asked now for the first time. So while some of this legislation, at least at the federal level, didn't have as much momentum as some of the results that we were experiencing and the victories that we were securing at the state level, today's politics is a very different politics from that of 2019.
Absolutely.
And this Congress that's asking these questions, that is considering, wait, what makes the best money? And of course, all of this is game theory. All of this is other countries looking around and the America looking around and saying, how can I best situate myself? And of course, the answer that many of them are coalescing around is gold. It's non-political, decentralized, inflation-proof money. And that's why all these countries are coalescing around this. And that's why America should do this audit, of course, to make sure that ours are there. So after introduction of the bill, the first step would be to get the bill introduced.
Right.
And hopefully we're hopeful that that will happen in the next couple of weeks. After that, it will be a product of how much grassroots firepower can we generate towards this issue. You know, Washington, D.C. gets 1 million phone calls and 1 million emails every day. So it's going to require a Herculean lift from citizens, from taxpayers, from people in states calling the DC switchboard and letting them know that this is an important part of why people voted for them, an important part of America's sustainability as a global power. And so that's what it will come to. It will come down to whether or not we, the people, can raise our voices enough to draw enough attention to force hearings on this issue, to force votes on this issue, because most politicians, truthfully, don't want to lead. They don't aim to lead. Doing something that is novel, doing something that puts them out on a ledge is not something most politicians want to do. Their job is to get reelected. That is priority number one. So forcing politicians to see the light is what this is going to ultimately take. And in order to get them to see the light, we must first make them feel the fire.
Yeah, no, you absolutely nailed it, JP. I feel like this year is going to be such an eye-opener for everyone in the silver gold community, people around the world. I'm confident we'll see some progress with all of us making, shining a light on it. So I'm really excited for that and for everything, for the updates. You know what? It's been such a huge pleasure having you, JP, come down to speak to the silver and gold community, to speak to everyone on the channel. As the market develops and as everything that moves forward this year, I'd really, really love to have you back on to give us another update of what's going on. So I'd love to speak to you soon.
Thanks for having me on, Ivan. Next time we talk, gold will be at 4,000.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Talk to you soon, JP.
Sounds good.